Now let's look at a different stereo EQ technique, which is going to get more creative, as it's going to use some of the same principles we've seen so far, as in creating differences in the left and right channels to add width. What I want is to make a modulating comb filter effect, using EQ and the Max for Live LFO tool. So first, I've got a new piano sample in the project. Which is mono. So if I add EQ8 and set it to left-right mode, then what I want is 6 bell curves on each side, which I'm going to set slightly differently from each other, to create a different comb filter on the left and right. Starting on the left then, I'll set the frequency to 300. Turn the Q right up, so it's a very narrow band, and then bring the gain right down. Then I can do the same for the other bands, only go up in frequency increments of whatever I want. Maybe I'll do 100 Hz. And then I'll continue working through the other bands in the same way. Then for the right channel, I'll do exactly the same, only choose different frequencies, starting at 350 Hz instead. And what we end up with then is 2 comb filters, which have different frequency notches in the left and right. So now there's some stereo information and the sound is a lot wider. What I want now though is to modulate the frequencies of each band with an LFO. And the way I can do this is to first map all the frequencies to a macro control in a rack, and then to the Max for Live LFO tool. So I'll rack up the EQ, and then map each of its frequencies to the first macro. You can see when I do this, we actually lose all our frequency values, so I could have done this first. However, now I can use the ranges here to set the frequencies back. So I'll set the minimum values to the band frequencies once again. And I'll set the max values to 100 Hz above the minimum. Then, if I add the LFO tool to the rack, turn it on, and map it to the macro, you can see now the bands are all modulating smoothly up and down across the 100 Hz range. And in the sides, you can hear the frequencies modulating up and down, and becoming silent when they align with the other channel, as the notches match up at that point, so the left and right signals become identical and there are no out of phase components anymore. And if you want to, you can repeat the process for the other channel now, creating a different modulation effect, like over a greater range or at a different speed, using a separate LFO tool, depending on how complex you want the overall sound to be. Now I've got my 2 different stereo EQs on the drums and piano tracks. You can hear the big effect they have on the mix when I turn them on and off, which goes from a very flat, not so spacious sound to a much wider one with the piano enveloping and shifting around the whole mix, whilst the drums are more focused in the center, but with some extra sparkle at the edges.